welcome again to Lead Wisco. My name is Troy Murphy, and I'm with, again, my good friend Ryan Kibbe. Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
It's a good day.
Good.
To be in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lead Wisco, we are a podcast and a cinemacast, as I've heard the phrase, that really focuses on people's stories and how leadership and faith intersect. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited about our guest today. It's the first woman guest we've had, and I feel a little bit of shame and guilt that
first of many.
Yes, that's what I would like to say, for sure.
In Jesus' name.
But the first I actually was made aware of this amazing leader was she got to speak at a global leadership summit kind of gathering.
Awesome.
And I just said, wow, I need a Jeri. That's what I said. That's her first name. I just said, I need a Jeri. I have to find one. And really, because I was
you need to clarify that.
Not like Mary or replacing my wife or anything, but more of like in what we're doing with leadership and the area. Yeah. I just loved her passion, her energy. And so I'm excited about talking with her.
Yeah, we learn every time, don't we? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. So Jeri she's got a long list of things, and typically I don't do a long list of bios. She is very well versed in nonprofit organizations, budgeting, advertising, hospitality industry, event management. I think she's got a Bachelor of Science in political science and government from Indiana University, Purdue University, Fort Wayne. So she's educated, she's got experience, but more importantly, what we're passionate about, she's got a story. So
yeah.
Hey, welcome, Jeri.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I am honored to be the first female guest.
Yeah. So you got a lot. That's a lot of weight on your shoulders. You got to represent.
A little bit of pressure.
So it's Jeri Purdy, and I want to know, give the listeners and watchers a little bit about you. Married, kids, what you do, what you've done. Kind of give them some texture about who you are.
Yeah, so I am married to my high school sweetheart. We will be married 17 years this nice. July. We are from a very small town. We have 4 beautiful daughters, ranging from 6 to 12. They are the highlight of our life and just a precious gift from God. I get to, in my professional career, I consult with the Global Leadership Network, and I am the executive director of GLS and Beyond in Northeast Indiana.
Okay, so already a connection. And when I read her bio, I was like, I don't meet many people with 4 daughters. I have 4 daughters, and that's so we could share and swap a lot of great stories about having
for those of us that have 3 daughters and 1 boy, we can learn too.
That changes everything.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 dudes in the house changes everything.
Yeah. It could be a podcast in itself, 4 daughters. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yes.
Jeri, you have a story, I'm sure, and I know Ryan and I are excited to hear. I first want to, though, before we go to story, if you don't mind, Ryan, I think to talk about, tell us what's important to you in leadership. I want to hear that first, and then I want to go backwards and figure out.
Let's do it.
How did she develop those things? So, Jeri, tell us what's important to you as a leader of a nonprofit, a leader of, you've been in the secular space also. What's important about leadership to you?
What's important to me is authenticity. And I think authenticity breeds trust. If you show up every day who God created you to be and are an open book, as we were just saying, Troy, we're open books. It gives the people that you work with, whether they are your employees, whether your vendors, your customers, it gives them that trust that they know who's going to show up every single day. There's consistency. So those 2 are really important to me. And, I try to model it as best as I can and have people hold me accountable. But I think that those are important, not just in nonprofit and for-profit, but I think those 2 are really important in your family as well. And if we can model that for our kids, man, they get to go out and be those leaders that will change the world as well.
So that came from somewhere. So now draw us back. What's Jeri's story? So obviously you have one in a family. I'm assuming it's from where you are at now, but maybe not. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up And what's really shaped how you formed your leadership, I would say, values and priorities?
Yeah, well, I mean, grew up in a really, really small town. Manchester College, now Manchester University, is in North Manchester, Indiana. When college was in session, we had about 5,000 residents. When college was not in session, we had about 2,000, 2,500. So very small community. And both my husband and I grew up in that community. I grew up in a challenging home life in my younger years. It was hard, and it was a lot of character building and a lot of seeing my community come alongside me and other influential adults that really poured into my life, and I'm so thankful for them. My oldest brother is 10 years older than me. My middle brother was 7 years older than me. And so I really was the baby of the family, the only girl. And so I grew up in a German-Irish family that was pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? And get it done. And, while my childhood wasn't what I want for my kids, I'm so thankful for my parents because they did the best that they could. And I have a great relationship with my parents now. It wasn't always great growing up, but I'm thankful for the redemptive qualities of my faith, that I can now have that relationship with my parents, that I can extend grace, that I can extend forgiveness. And I hope that my kids do the same for my husband and I, because we're not going to do it perfect either, right? But that's a part of our story. So grew up in that small town. My husband and I started dating when I was 15 and he was 17. So we've been together 21 years. You can do the math. You'll know how old I am if you do that math.
So wait, are you going to let your daughters date at 15?
We talk about that because we're going to have a 13-year-old in September, and it is frightening. It is frightening.
Yeah,
probably not, right? Probably, let's wait till 16.
Don't do as I do as I say.
That's it.
Right?
Exactly.
Use the excuse. It was a different era. It was a different era.
We didn't have social media. That's all I'm going to say.
You find every excuse you can and you use it. Leverage it against them. That's awesome.
I like that. We're gonna have to chat, friends, offline about parenting. But yeah, I grew up in that small town, and my husband's family was the opposite. His parents were, the coaches and the Sunday school teachers, and they launched YFC in our county. And so they're so thankful for them and the ways that they modeled family, and they modeled, that loving relationship. My husband and I both went to local colleges here in Northern Indiana. He went to Huntington University, that is a small Christian college, and I went to IPFW, which is kind of a campus of IU and Purdue that was in Fort Wayne. And God has just been so gracious to open doors that we didn't even think possible for these small town kids, right? So just sitting here today, I have to pinch myself and say the only reason I'm here is because of God. Yeah. The only reason I'm here is because of his grace to surround me with the right people that pointed me towards a future that was bigger than what I felt I deserved, or the world was telling me that I deserved. So I'm just so thankful. And I love doing that for other leaders. My husband and I feel a responsibility to do that for the next generation, obviously with the generation that we're raising in our home, but with their friends and with our community, because we see such the importance of community and how it formed who we are today. So, fast forward, we've lived in Minneapolis for my husband's career. He was in orthopedics for 15 years before he started his own orthopedic company. And when he took that jump to start his own company, I kind of went back into the corporate space, and that's how I got introduced to the Global Leadership Summit. I'd never heard of it before 2016, and I asked my boss to fire me because I wasn't doing enough in project management for his company. I said, I'm bored. I shouldn't be taking your paycheck. And he said, hey, I have a different plan for you. Do you want to do this event called the GLS? And I said, sure. I don't know what that is, but I love events. And I watched 5 years of GLS on DVDs. Clearly, that was before streaming. And
What's a DVD?
What's a DVD?
I know, what's a
tape?
DVD? It wasn't a VHS, so I'm not that.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I just fell in love with I fell in love with the speakers and the summit and just what it was opening my mind to as to what a leader was, right? In my mind before that, a leader was somebody that was a manager, a director, a CEO. It wasn't me. I didn't see myself as a leader. I didn't see myself as somebody that could influence things in my community. And then we hosted the GLS, and it opened this space in my heart for my community that I didn't even know existed, and set a fire in my belly. And I have not turned back since then. And I just love being able to serve other leaders that maybe don't self-identify as leaders, activating that passion and that purpose in their life that maybe they don't feel in their vocation, but is really the calling in their life. And so it's just been a fun journey. I can fill you in on any other questions that you have from here to there, but there's
I'm still in
the
awe.
quick bye-bye.
I'm still you told your boss you're bored and you need to fire me because I'm bored. And I'm like, you just told me everything I need to know about you right there. Like, you need to have that's amazing. Like, you had awareness. You were that self-aware at that point. I'm surprised he probably didn't say, here's a pay raise. That's awesome.
No, I think he was a little flabbergasted. He said, nobody's ever told me that they need to be fired. And I said, I just don't want to get paid if I'm not going to be having purpose, right? And if I'm not going to be fulfilling.
So I wonder if we dig a little bit. Can we dig a little bit?
Yeah, let's dig.
So I'll model something so that maybe it helps you find texture to it. My home situation is funny because I have a similar home situation than you did. My father passed away. I have a great relationship with my mom. I did make amends with my father, but he was a very difficult man, and that's an understatement. Wanted by the police and whatnot. What I realized is one of the values I have that's similar to yours is whether it's called oversharing or just I have this drive that I have to be the same at home, the same on this podcast, CinemaCast, the same to my church staff. And so authenticity is big. Why? Because as far as I could go back, I could remember my dad being a certain person at home, and then we'd go to church and it'd be different. And everybody loved my dad. And I saw the hell that he would create at home and the evil that he would do. And I go, I have to do the opposite of this. And I think, so one of the things I heard from, therapists or counselors, and I'm not that, by the way, is that kids are great recorders. They're not, they don't do good order, like we can't organize it. And so all we do is remember things. And typically I'll ask person, so what was some of those first few memories? And that's what I'm asking you, Jeri. A first few experiences maybe that you feel safe sharing that shaped some of who you are. Because you just said, pull up your bootstraps, get it done. You're authentic, you're inspirational. That came from somewhere, somehow, some way.
Yeah. And I like to say I'm not a counselor either, but I've been in enough counseling sessions that I'm counselor adjacent, right? I also say I'm so special. I have two. That's right. I do. And I think it's something, first, I just want to say the more that we can normalize that, and nobody's family is perfect, right? Everybody has their issues, and we all need counseling at some level. And let's normalize that, number one, right? Let's have that be an okay thing to do, and to check in on yourself and your marriage and your family. But I would say, some of those first memories of just not wanting people to know what's going on behind closed doors, right? And not wanting, to be fully transparent with people, right? As to the hell you're going through in your home. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. That really drove me to say, I can't live like that. I can't put on a mask and just go out there and say everything's okay. Because I realize there are more people like me than not. And I have an opportunity to use the pain that I've had to give glory to God and to show what he's been able to bring me through, and give hope to other people. And so I can't give hope if I am not authentic and not sharing what's happening or what I've been through. So I lost my middle brother when I was 11, and he was 17 in a car accident. And that was the first time that things became really public of what was going on. And I could either show up and say, everything is okay, everything's fine, and put on that mask, or I could be myself and let people help me. And help is really hard for me. I'm an enneagram 8, so control is really high on my list, right? And so when I ask for help, it's really letting go of that control. But again, that's that community piece that I had so many people that wrapped their arms around our family, that wrapped their arms around me, that worked through the grief process and the ongoing grief process, right? That you have to show up and be you. And nobody can help those hidden things if you continue to hide them and put on the mask. And so, just being a leader and being a mom, I apologize to my kids probably more than I do anything else. I don't get it right. And I want them to know that their mommy is not, she's not perfect. And don't put me on a pedestal, because that's unhealthy, right? That's the other end of the spectrum. I don't want them to see me mess up one day and be like, oh, Mom's not perfect. They know that from many different areas. I apologize this morning. Getting your shoes on and getting out the door to go to school is hard, even when we've been doing it for years, right? And there's
especially with 4 girls.
So, especially, right? So that's one of those areas where, losing my brother and having that be very public, and then having to really tell the truth of what was going on. And I moved out of my house when I was 15. And I think that that's another area where I just, I had to be true to what was going on and give the information to advocate for what I needed, and grow up a little early. And, that's not going to be the situation for my kids, I hope and pray. But I really want them to show up and be themselves and be okay with being themselves, and not be, in their late teens or their early 20s and grappling with what version am I?
Yeah. That's so good.
I have so many questions, but I'm going to start with the one that came. I may have to backtrack, but I'm listening to you talk and I'm going, wow, she could be really busy, but busy isn't always better. So my question for you is this: how do you balance, I'm going to use the word balance, the mindset that I'm trying to, because I'm asking your advice actually with my girls. Some people say you can have it all, but I don't know if you can have it all right now, everything all at the same time. In essence, I mean, can you do all these other things and be there for every soccer game, this illusion of balance in some things? I'm just being honest. It is a tornado in the Kibbe house from 6 to 7. My wife just talked about this Sunday from the pulpit. From 6 to 7, it's a tornado. Everybody's moving fast and furious. I don't have time from 6 to 7 to have a world-changing quiet time with God. From 6 to 7. But I can have other aspects to that later in the day. We have to make choices. That's really what I'm asking you. How do you navigate the illusion, the American dream of having it all, versus having what he wants for you with your kids, your family, and your career?
Yeah, especially being authentic. And Jeri looks like she's perfectly put together. And how is she managing?
I love her honesty, though.
Yeah, I will just tell you, my life fell apart about 4 years ago because I was trying to have it all, right? I was trying to do all the things, be there for everyone, love GLS, love my community, and saying yes to too many things. And that's when I enlisted my second therapist. I enlisted my business therapist, and he really is my business therapist and my business coach. And I said, I can't do this anymore. My oldest daughter's health was bad. We were in the hospital for about 6 months straight. She ended up having a feeding tube, and a lot of her things were autoimmune and family things, but a lot of it was triggered by stress and this perfection mentality that I need to be all things to all people. And I said, ooh, I'm modeling that.
Yeah.
And I do not want to create more of those.
Right.
So it became looking at my life and saying, okay, what are the top areas that I need to be investing in? Well, I really need to have a strong faith, right? That's what we're called to do. We're called to love him, and then we're called to love people. Well, what am I going to put my love in first? I'm going to put it in my family, because that's what God has entrusted to me in my four walls, right? And then I'm going to put it into my, and by family, I mean my husband and my kids and our extended family. And then I'm going to put it into my work and my community. And so it was really coming up with a filter and a life mission that I feel like God has called me with my gifts and talents, and then beginning to evaluate and eliminate. And so I've evaluated and eliminated, and I took myself off of 8 boards. I took myself off of committees, and I said, this is not healthy for my family. This is not healthy for me. And it's not effective for you. Yeah. You need to have somebody in this space that's fully committed. And so I do that on a quarterly basis. And I have my business coach that holds me accountable. And we check in once a month, and we do a book study, and we talk about life. And he says, okay, what have you committed to? What's coming off your list? It's not a balance doesn't exist. I think it's one of those myths that you have to have a really, really, really good mindset that if I add something else needs to be subtracted. It's not, I'm going to keep adding until I get to that point that I crash. So that's what I try to do. And, my kids come first. And so I don't negotiate pick-up and drop-offs with my kids. That's valuable time. And so I do as many of those as I can for school. I try to be engaged in their classroom, but where I can say no, I say no. And I'm not going to be at everything, but my kids know that if I'm not at something with them, they have had a conversation about it. They know that it fits into my mission and values, right? There's a bigger picture, but I never want my kids to look back and say, Mommy cared so much about our community, but she didn't care about me. I want them to know that they're loved, they're valued, and they deserve all the time that I can give them, right?
This is so good, because this is something every career professional who has kids, we all can relate to that too. I actually heard a tip once from somebody that helped me when I miss a thing, whatever the thing is with my kid. Instead of saying, gosh, I'm sorry, that just, life's hard, suck it up. I actually learned to take that in a redemptive way and say, you know what? My heart's there for you. And I've been at those soccer games and whatever. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to believe in faith for another outcome for something else that will be twice as fun. So in essence, it's like, oh, I missed that, but we're going to go over here and do this. And I know that there's some events that you just, they're non-negotiable. There are certain things that by job, I'm out, I'm going to be there. But I think it's that learning how to work through that, through disappointment and not disappointing our kids and having that dialogue. I'm guessing you've been doing that for a while, in essence, working those type of things with your kids?
I have, yeah. And so I love that redemptive aspect too. That's a great way to put it. But, I'm a little type A, right? So we have the family calendar. Everybody's color coded. Everybody knows where we're going. You talk about chaos and a tornado.
You just made me nervous with color code.
No, I know. I'm a little crazy. But, I have those conversations and just let them know I can't be there. But it also is an opportunity to not feel like you have to do all of the things. And I want my kids to know that I love them, that they're amazing, that they're gifts from God, but my world doesn't just revolve around my kids. And I think that's setting up a mentality for a generation that nobody's going to be your biggest cheerleader but mom and dad, but the world doesn't just revolve around you, that there are other things that God has called us to do, and you're a part of that. But God has also given us these gifts and talents, whether it's through our career or through the way that we serve our community. And we have to be true to that too, and show up in the way that God is asking us to do it in our unique way and in our unique space, because we want them to do that too, right? Yeah. And so it gives them permission when they're parents, hopefully, that they have a generation that doesn't think the world revolves around them either, right? And I know that that's a controversial way to look at it. I love my kids, don't get me wrong, but I don't want them to think that the whole world needs to rearrange their life just so they're happy. That's just a false illusion.
Good. Yeah, you're speaking. That's
so I want to, I'll just make one statement about this whole thing about how we grow up. One of the I guess, sad discoveries we have to find is we usually try to swing the pendulum away from the negative experiences that we had. And so the irony of the good intent of what Jeri's sharing is, gosh, I had to be independent. I want to be authentic. I'm going to organize my life. I'm going to, create order out of chaos. I mean, all those things are actually good, but you're hearing how that had an effect on your family. So it's great that you're doing your work, which is awesome. But I want to just say, I think from a male perspective, and I don't think men give enough credit, I want to get off the mom thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's critical, obviously. But I think a lot of men get kind of this elevation of being great, leaders. And I think moms balance, moms that are in leadership like Jeri is, like you are, Jeri, have, I think, a unique role that I don't think a lot of men do, because I don't think men carry that same responsibility. Now, some do, and I'm not generalizing even for men. I think I want to move into a little bit of your accomplishments outside your home and talk more about, so how do you live this stuff out with people that do have a faith, don't have a faith, do have some of the same values, don't have some of the same values? What are some of the disciplines you've had to do? So, you're saying color code for the kids. I want to hear the running an organization now as a leader, because I see you as a mentor peer, and I want to learn. We want to learn from you that way.
Well, I color code for my organization too. So if you really want to be honest, I can't get away from that sickness. I really just think it's important when you're authentic and transparent that there's consistency in the way that you show up. I love what you said, Troy. I want people to know that when I show up, whether you're a believer or a non-believer, you're a nonprofit, you're in the church, you're in for-profit, that you're going to get the same Jeri every time, right? And I think that that's so important for your community to know that it is authentic and it is true, that you're getting the same person that shows up all the time. And it's so important for your employees as well, that they're not living on eggshells saying, ooh, I can't have this hard conversation because I don't know the Jeri that's going to show up in the meeting. No, Jeri's going to be fair. Hopefully they say that. But she's going to come at it with energy, and we're going to come up with a solution, and we're not going to place blame. We're going to just say, what can we do to move forward? So I think that that's really important. But I also think, I don't see it as accomplishments. Again, it's hard for me to grapple that and put my mind around it, because I'm still living in that space where I'm just doing what God told me to do. Yeah. And I'm just saying, okay, let's think bigger. And I've said this a few times, and maybe I said this to you, Troy, before this podcast, but man, if there's a dream that I feel like, oh yeah, I can do that, I can check the box, I can get that done in 6 months, that's not big enough. Yeah. I want to dream so big that it scares me and it scares all of the people around me, because then it's God's dream, right?
That's right.
And so I just am authentic about that and transparent that, yeah, this scares me and I don't know how we're going to do it, but I know that our God is amazing and he is a big God, and I don't want to put him in a box. And so if this big, crazy idea came to me or came to you or came through our team, then let's pursue it and let's see what we can do. And God might change the course along the way, right, but let's go towards that big, crazy dream that nobody thinks is possible.
So she fills a room, like your presence, and you have leaders that kind of show up in a room and they're not real big. You're big in a room, and because of that, obviously an 8 obviously gets a lot of stereotypes about being strong and powerful,
especially an 8 female.
Right. And so I guess a couple of questions I have is, how do you then manage, how have you worked through or offset or created a culture that you're not dominating? Because I'm not saying you're dominating. I'm just saying your presence, your passion, your inspiration could make people who aren't as confident shrink. Are there some things that you could tell our listeners and watchers, like, here's how I've had to help, I guess, walk with people as I am powerful and excited and have big vision?
Yeah. I call my 20s a wake of bodies in the rearview mirror, right? So I think self-awareness and understanding your own personality and your own strengths is so, so important. So I get that things that are natural to me or my strengths that come easily are not other people's strengths, but being self-aware has really helped with that.
Yeah.
Really having those conversations with my two counselors and saying, hey, no, that's probably not the best way to approach it, especially with a business counselor, right?
Yeah.
And a lot more listening than talking. So, hey, team, this is what I think the direction we should go. Can you give me your feedback? Because you need all of those different personality types to move forward, whether it's community development, whether it's at your church or your organization. You hired them for a reason. They're on your team for a reason. So let's trust them and empower them, because the last thing people want is a micromanager or feeling like they can't ever make a mistake.
Right.
We know that our mistakes sometimes are what lead us to our biggest breakthroughs. And so I want to create that culture where it's okay to come and have a really big idea. And as long as we didn't go bankrupt and, we didn't sin and we didn't mess up somebody's, self-image, then let's go for the big things.
That's good.
And let's learn.
Yeah. I just told our team, I said, we've been doing success autopsies. I said, what we should do too is do a failure board and have a celebration.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and I go, yeah, seriously, what if we have like a celebration over all the failures? Because then at least we're creating a culture to go, we tried something, it didn't work, we want to learn from it.
Yeah.
Man, that you want that culture to change, especially with strong leaders. And I know I'm high, like I am big in a room. I'm always thinking strategy. I find like that, they call it the halo effect. If you talk too much, I love what you said, Jeri, all of a sudden then people go, oh, he's already got this figured out. Actually, that's really good. I'm not going to say anything now. And people back away. And so I've had to, through counseling, which I've had my handful, yeah, you shouldn't say it that way, or you should stop. I have to stop the strategy wheel and go, I have to invite people into the process with me in my brain. Because if you leave me too much time alone, I'll think way too fast about things. Can you tell us, Jeri, how the challenge of being a female in a leadership culture has affected you, impacted you, been positive, been negative?
That was my next question, because I have 3 daughters, one who I see a call to do and lead in ministries probably, and I have a lot of questions for you. So he just asked you the question that has been burning in me for the last 5 minutes.
Well, I can say I didn't see myself in a ministry space, right? I have a political science degree. I thought I was going to go in and be, chief of staff, and that God clearly shut that door for a reason, but use those gifts and talents, right, to channel it in a different direction and for his kingdom in a different area. So I would say, I'm still learning that one. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's been hard. There have been a lot of women that came before me that have really helped pave the way. But I think it's a shift in mindset. To your point, I believe my family is the number one calling, whether you're male or female, that's your number one calling, to raise leaders to change the world. But the mental load that moms carry that dads don't always carry is a lot, right? So I'm thinking about pickup and gymnastics and all of those things while I'm thinking about an organization to run and community impact. And I would just say, give a lot of grace, right? So tell your daughters that it's not going to be perfect, but I can tell you that if they didn't work outside the home, it wouldn't be perfect either. I've done that. And that was a lot of mental stress where I just didn't feel like I was living up to God's purpose and calling. I love my kids again, but felt this calling to do more. And it was a really hard time for me in my marriage. It was a really hard time for me personally. And once I went back into that corporate space and started my own business, I felt like I had an outlet and a tool to do and use the other side that wasn't the mom side, right? But those gifts and talents are so important. And I I would say grace on both sides. So grace that you can have that conversation in a loving way and with the right intention. Then when you have a leader that maybe is pushing back and you feel like it's because of gender or it's because of your age or your experience, that you can say, help me understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Having that awareness and the right timing to do that is really, really important. It's not in the middle of a board meeting. It's not in the middle of a stand-up meeting. It is scheduling a meeting, maybe over a coffee or a breakfast, and say, hey, help me understand, because this is what it feels like to me. And using those I feel statements instead of, hey, this is what it is, I think is so important. And giving the words to it. I don't think we teach our kids, words for those feelings or words for those situations. Awkward conversations and hard conversations are a gift.
Yeah.
And I love them.
Yeah. You and I must have seen the same life coach, because help me understand has become my number one tool when I don't So help me understand. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly.
Well, they say too, we feel before we think. And Chip Dodd's work on just the 8 emotions and learning how to do a check-in is really a great beginning to awareness. But also, what I've heard from, obviously our past affects us. And so giving words to what we feel, whether it's way back in our past or currently, is so important, which gets me then to adverse situations, which you just said, those are gift. I love that. There's always there's some gold in every problem, adverse situation we're in. You got to look for it. So COVID just obviously shut down so much. Tell us some gold that you found in this season, obviously as a key leader in your community.
It was a hard season. And I think we are all feeling that. And we all felt the grief of losing, connection, especially being an extrovert. But I think it gave me permission to be introspective and to slow down and see where effective busy really is, right? And to see our community in a new light and really have some of those things that we'd had pushed under the rug and said, oh, we'll get to it later. Oh, we'll get to it later. It was like the rug was stomped on and you couldn't get to it later. You had to get to it now. So it really highlighted what we needed to do now versus what we were just doing to keep us busy. Yeah. So I love the gold nuggets that come out of those difficult situations or those problems. I love how Craig Groeschel says it's not problems, it's an opportunity. So as leaders, we're chief opportunity officers, that we should be looking for ways to not just solve problems, but see them as opportunities of growth. So, COVID was hard, but those opportunities came up, whether it was with feeding kids and really highlighting the need for having quality nutrition in our families, in our communities, or just really having mental health for leaders and having them check in with their employees.
Yeah.
That's a big one. And that became normalized over this last year of having them say, how are you doing? No, not how are you doing on a project, but how are you doing as a person? Yeah. How's your family doing? So it's getting back to that relationship component, because we know that if we don't have relationship, it just becomes transactional. And relationship is what drives transformation. It's what drives the success of your organization. And, I love the failure board. I think I might take that and implement it. Okay, what have we failed in? And let's celebrate it.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to hear about faith? Because she keeps talking about her faith that we have yet to ask her.
Yeah. And I do. Can I ask one other before we do that?
No, you're not allowed.
Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So, forgive me because I keep thinking about my daughters. I know you're the interview subject here, but
you keep pulling this into a parenting seminar.
I'm making this all about helping me. So I'm so sorry. I feel so selfish, sort of. But how have you navigated? Because I've had these talks I've got a 17-year-old, and I'm telling you, I see I just see some really cool things that you're sharing. Can you help me understand, just as a woman, as a female, he talked about being a presence. How is that with interactions with men? And can I just be completely transparent? The whole thing that we're dealing with the sexual culture out there of what women go through. Can I just throw that out there? People deal with that, and I hear ladies deal with that. Now, I'm not saying you deal with that currently, but how have you navigated dealing with that?
Are you asking how she's teaching her daughters about that?
Both. Okay. I want to know, how did she navigate it? How are you teaching your daughters how to deal with the realities of men or other people who are harassing? Mm-hmm. I'm asking the elephant in the room. I don't know how else to ask that. But how did you deal with it? How do you, as a leader, how did you coach your kids?
Yeah, I think, my kids are growing up in a completely different generation than I did, and where maybe comments were just brushed off in the past. I'm no longer standing in that camp of, hey, no, you're just from a certain generation. That's the way you're going to approach it. I'm saying, hey, I'm more than what my exterior is. So why don't you talk to me about accomplishments? Why don't you talk to me about what we've been able to do as an organization? And it's just having those respectful conversations, right? So and sometimes it's not respectful, because if it is a blatant comment that is just not needed, then I'm going to address it. And so God gave me a voice for a reason. And I am the model for 4 young ladies. And so I don't want them to see their mom taking that and thinking it's okay, so that somebody can say the same thing to them or treat them the same way. So with our girls, I always say, we need to be respectful. We need to be kind. There's a difference between kind and nice, right? You can say it in a nice way, but kindness is pointing out that they may not speak to you in that manner, that they may not treat you in that manner, right? And understanding that, my husband models it. He says to sometimes to my girls, you can't treat my wife like that, right?
Come on.
You can't say that to my wife.
Love it.
And so I think as dads, there's this huge responsibility to model it. The way that you want your girls to be treated, you need to model it in treating your wife that way, right? You need to model it in the way that you treat other females. And I think as an 8 female, I don't deal with that fear of men, maybe of that, I've really been conscious about that, especially with our almost 13-year-old, of saying, hey, this situation may not be a safe situation. We were just on vacation. I'll use this as an example. And we went in to a gas station late at night when we were driving. And I was like, I'm going to stand right here. And my daughter's like, Mom, I'm fine. I'm almost 13. And I was like, no, this is a teachable moment. You are in here by yourself. And I know you're confident and you're a future 8, right? But this is not a safe situation. And here's why this is not a safe situation. And so having those age appropriate conversations. And I think it just starts with us changing and reframing the way that we speak to young women, right? Yeah. Don't say, I love your outfit. You look so cute. How about you ask them, oh, what's your favorite subject in school? What have you been, let's get to the heart of it.
I'm going to make my daughter watch this podcast. This is so good. And thank you. I had to ask that question because I'm really trying. I'm not a female. I don't face what
I'm shocked.
I don't apologize for that, but I'm not. But I'm a dad with young daughters, and I hear it. I'm coaching them through some of that stuff in the middle school and and high school stuff. But when it comes to the professional world, I don't want the sins of our forefathers to be. I want my kids empowered. So thank you. I'm done, Troy.
I think I'm going to go one step further. So you lead churches. How about training from the pulpit? Hey, let's have a conversation about who God created them to be and their gifts and talents. And so when they walk into our Sunday school classrooms, it's, hey, Susie, what do you feel like God has called you to do? How has God uniquely gifted you, right? Instead of, oh, you look so cute today, whether it's a boy or a girl, right? That outfit is so cute. Let's really get to the essence of who God created us to be as human beings, regardless of our gender, right? And so I think it's sometimes those conversations that we can model as influencers, and we don't realize how much influence we have, that if we even just have that awkward or difficult conversation of saying, let's retrain our brain to have those interactions with our youth or with our peers in a different way, it's so meaningful. So there you go. I got to be the
Thank you.
interviewer.
You were helpful.
Ryan's sending you a check for parent counseling.
Yeah,
for
thanks
sure.
for the counseling session. I appreciate it.
I used to tell my girls, I used to make up stories before they go to bed, but I'd say, I want you to know you're beautiful on the outside, but where are you really beautiful? And they would repeat it back on the inside. So to teach them, that there's that God creation. So I think that's what I want to hear. It's evident that you intersect your faith in everything you've just told us.
Yeah.
So how did people always say how they found God, but really I think God found you. So how'd that happen?
Yeah. Well, I grew up, my mom went to a very evangelical Pentecostal church. And so that for me growing up was kind of the brimstone and fire relationship with God. And it really didn't feel like mine. My mom would say that my conversion was at 4 or 5. And that's not where God found me. God found me after I lost my second brother at the age of 11. At a youth event, and I just realized, I don't have a relationship with Christ. It is not my own. And that was my pivotal moment. And, I've been working towards the best relationship that I can have and growing in my faith ever since. But that's where my faith journey began, is losing my brother and really coming to grips with my relationship was not right with God.
Wow.
And people have poured into me over a number of years. YFC, Youth for Christ, is a big component of my faith journey and the adults that poured into me in the early years. But I think our faith goes through seasons, and this is your profession and your area of expertise, but this is what's been true for me. Being that baby Christian as a preteen and as a teen was way different than it was in my 20s as a newlywed, and it is now in my 30s and late 30s as a professional and a leader and a mom. And it's been so great to see God meet me in each one of those chapters of my faith with the people that he needed to be intersected in my life. So I can't not talk about my faith. When people tell me I need to go have a business conversation or do a business presentation, I'm always like, well, I'm going to share my faith. And they say no or yes. And I just don't listen. And I'm like, that's a part of my journey. If you want to know who I am, then you have to know whose I am.
That's so good. Well, I would love to have you is there anything you'd want to say to just leaders? And I don't want to gender specific because you're a leader.
Yeah.
What would you just want leaders to know? What's important for them to remember?
I think what's important for them to remember is that, God created you for a specific time and place in history, and he placed you there. So whether you feel the weight of your leadership or the worthiness of your leadership, he's called you for a unique gift, and just lean into that and have confidence in that. I don't like the term self-confidence. I like the term God confidence, because I think that gives us a bigger picture of what we're capable of doing. So lean into the God confidence of who he's called you to be, and just be true to yourself, be authentic. And I can't wait to hear what leaders are able to accomplish. And Wisconsin, Lead Wisco is an amazing opportunity to share so many journeys of leaders. And I can't wait to hear some transformational stories from you guys. It's exciting what's going on in Wisconsin.
It is. Well, as a dad, a pastor, leader, and a fellow authentic, transparent person who sometimes says too much, too fast, too quick, like Troy, we're brothers that. I would rather be that way than a stuffer who's a fraud and lives with a life with a mask on. So I love this. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I feel pumped and inspired.
Yeah. My daughters will listen to this podcast.
And I know I told you, when I said I saw Jeri up kind of speaking about what she was doing, I'm like, I need a Jeri. And I think God sent us Catherine, who's behind the producing deal. Right?
I saw Catherine's nodding the whole time. I'm asking.
She's probably
going to
cry when we start talking about this, but no, I do. I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to finish with this story. We had a gal come in yesterday and share a little bit about, she didn't know if her efforts for that she's done with us with the GLS have actually been fruitful.
Oh, wow.
And I'm looking over at Kat, and she's starting to cry. And I saw, now Catherine's Catherine, so she's not Jeri, but I saw a little Jeri in her, because all of a sudden she goes, excuse me. She said, I'm here because I'm the fruit of what you did. I saw her step in, and I was like, wow, yes.
Come on.
So good. So part of that is, man, I love, and I know she's really inspired by you. I know my wife is too, Jeri. So thank you. You are an inspiration, and I think we're seeing that spread out through more than just Warsaw, Indiana. So thank you.
Thanks for
Well,
joining.
I'm inspired by you, and Catherine's amazing. And so let's think about ways we can raise up more Troys and Catherines and Ryans. I think that's the way to look at it, right?
Yep. There you go. Well, Jeri, thank you so much. We'll leave some of the information at the end of the podcast if people want to get in touch with what you're doing and all the things that are happening there in Warsaw. But thank you again so much for your time.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening today. We hope you were inspired by Jeri and her story. Maybe you connected with her parenting advice, or you could relate to her experience as a woman in leadership. If this episode was helpful to you, we'd be so grateful if you subscribed or followed us, left us a review, or shared our podcast with someone you think may benefit from it. If you're looking for more leadership content, check out our social media. We post snippets of these episodes, leadership development resources, and more. If there's someone you think would be a great guest for us to talk to, message us on social media or send us an email at leadwisco@gbcc.me. Thanks for listening.